Buenos días a todas y todos. A la
Good
cuenta
morning to everybody. In the count of three, we will be live in this experience that has kept us closer to the communities during this year of confinement. Live with our audience in 1, 2, 3. The farm goes on. A radio program with information for the farming people of the most isolated areas of Colombia's geography, carried out by the UN Organization for the Reintegration of Agriculture, FAO. The transmission of this program does not compromise
a la FAO con ninguna
does
entidad
not compromise the FAO with any public entity or private entity.
Buenos días a todas y todos.
Good morning to everybody. We will be live on the count of three in this experience that has kept us closer to the farming communities during the year of the pandemic. Live with our listeners in 1, 2, 3. The farm goes on, the radio program that has information for farming people of the most isolated zones in the Colombian geography, carried out by the organization of the UN for the Feeding and the Agriculture, FAO. The transmission of this program does not compromise or link the FAO with any of the public entities or private entities. A very welcome to all of our participants. I am Alan Bojanik, representative of the FAO Colombia, and I am pleased to transport you today to this radial experiences among the webinar format. Welcome to the program Farm Goes On, which during 33 emissions have been able to bring us closer to the southern communities of Colombia. Today, we have the presence of Maria Consuelo Vergara, who is a specialist here in Colombia, in order to talk about the experiences and the lessons learned that COVID has left us, and also our work with the communities, the articulation with institutions to make progress in conjoint actions, and the challenges that this reality has given us in the communitarian communication. Hello, Maria Consuelo. Good morning, Mr. Bohani, and good morning to everybody who is joining our radio program and who are in sync with our radio. We have a very special program here with very special guests, and we will be able to talk about topics such as the one mentioned and also others that have been imposed as a challenge with this new reality. So welcome to everybody. And right now we will invite you to see and listen to some of the communication pieces that we have developed so that we can carry on to support the Colombian farmers amongst this pandemic. So let's go ahead.
Amiga y amigo campesino, para reducir el
Friend and
contagio.
farmer, in order to diminish the contagiousness of COVID, please disinfect all the surfaces you use with alcohol. Also use alcohol to disinfect your hands, shoes, and working clothes. Remember that you are the first defense against coronavirus. The farm goes on.
Amiga y amigo campesino, si usted vende
Friend,
productos,
farmer, if you are selling products, please use gloves and face masks at all times. Disposable gloves, you should change them every 3 hours. Avoid touching your face, nose, and mouth. Please wash your hands with abundance of soap. Please keep a distance of 2 meters and use face masks and also disinfection periodically. of surfaces and also of your working tools. The farm goes on, an alliance of National Radio of Colombia and FAO.
Amiga y amigo campesino, haga uso
Yeah, the
eficiente.
farmer, make an efficient use of water with dripping systems or aspersion systems by adequating your channels or using rainwater to water your crops. And during rainy seasons, build drainage challenge so that the excess of water does not damage farms. Make the most of leftovers from food in order to plant and other cycles. The farm goes on. This message is transmitted with the support of the U.S. Agency for International Development, the government of Sweden, the UN Organization for Agriculture, FAO, and it is financed by humanitarian help from ECHO European Union.
Bueno, antes de dar la bienvenida.
Okay, so before we give a warm welcome to our first guest, Silvia Bolliger, the official for the Bancolombia program, we would like you to know a little bit about her.
Silvia
Bolliger has worked in the assistance and human protection during 14 years. Her experience has focused on armed conflicts in the strategic and operative environment on the ground, in the management of programs and office supervision. She has also worked in the Philippines, Sudan, Bolivia, India, Thailand, and Geneva. And she has summed up a total of 8 years of humanitarian work in Colombia with CRR, ACNU, and ECHO. She has studied business administration and she has a master's in human action. Welcome, Sylvia. We would like to now ask you a few questions. From the international cooperation sphere, how do you evaluate the work that the FAO has done in order to attend the farmer community during the pandemic? Thank you so much, and welcome to everybody. Mr. Bohani, thank you. Maria Consuelo, thank you very much. So first of all, I want to confirm that FAO in Colombia is a very, very valued organization and is well established as a contribution to humanitarian causes. There's been a lot of contributions to give a response to emergencies as well as risk management. And well, personally, I've been able to participate in many missions of monitoring in their projects, and emotions are also running because FAO is running virtually in very rural areas with ethnic communities. Many times it's in armed conflict areas that have been very effective, which is very common in our Colombian context. FAO has also, well, first of all, FAO has made a lot of efforts and actions in the framework of humanitarian response with regards to COVID, and all of the three strategic priorities, which are access to food, critical food chain, as well as the protection of the people of the farming sector. In order to deepen a little bit more about your question, also the technical accompanying, the remote accompanying, also providing information to institutions and communities, this is a pretty relevant aspect and adaptation measure to this new context, right? With the financing of the ECHO, the FAO has been accompanying family and rural families that have been affected with other emergencies before the COVID, such as armed conflict, natural disasters, and also massive migrations. So we've been accompanying them to create resilience, and it's helped at least 3,000 vulnerable families to be better prepared to confront the COVID when it arrived. And they also already had productive capacities in order to confront and be able to stand the restrictions during the pandemic. During the monitoring of supplies and also life support, how the ECHO participants in rural areas resulted with less vulnerability, but also some more or bigger economic challenges because their rural areas are very far from anything, and this is a multi-risk zone. So the whole job with resilience that we did was very useful, and it allowed to eliminate negative mechanisms way contributing to the protection of these communities, particularly ECHO in Colombia, has very much appreciated the implementation of fast strategy, for emergency cases. And also in the context of COVID, it is also very useful to be aware that there was a lot of virtual activities done at distance so that they could carry out with the projects they started with, and also to start new projects during the pandemic. So that was also a big challenge. And another very good practice as a donor that we have always been informed of all of the changes and initiatives of the FAO, the framework of all of the projects that we finance, and especially in the pandemic, the communication between FAO and Colombia is always very fluid and opportune. Thank you. Thank you to you. And I just want to mention, Silvia and Maria Consuelo, that we also have live online Ana, who is the coordinator of the risk management of disasters in the regional office for Latin America, which is based in Santiago, Chile. But before we start to have a talk with her, let's get to know her a little bit better.
Ana Ricoy is oficial regional.
Ana Ricoy is the regional office of the risk management of the FAO for Latin America and the Caribbean, with a headquarters in Santiago de Chile. She is the head of the resilience programs of life means and emergency responses. She is an agronomist. She has a magister in economic and social sciences, compared agriculture and development of Agroparistak in Paris. Ana, welcome to this program. And here from the emission of the FAO, the regional office, how can the experience that we've had here in Colombia contribute or make a contribution to another country in this topic? Thank you, everybody, for connecting from the region. And good afternoon to all the people in other places. And a very warm welcome to Mr. Bohanic, Maria Consuela, and also Silvia Bolijar. From this Colombian experience, we mainly point out the whole articulation of strategies and social mobilization in a very complex context where movement is restricted and also social distancing, when many times the communities have very important limitations in accessing technology, or there are gaps in covering of phone signals. So it's precisely these communities that present the biggest necessities and difficulties. The experience here we've had in Colombia has demonstrated how adjusting sanity protocols or health protocols and productions, farming, post-farming, transportation, and commercialization, also feeding habits and technical support to the small producers. This all has contributed so that all of the businesses and the players in the food sector can make their tasks in a safe way and without interactions. So this has been fundamental because it's prevented the crisis from becoming a food crisis. So the experience we have in Colombia has made it very important to articulate the role of the state, the social organizations, the businesses that can produce employment and supply, and also keeping relationships with farmers and suppliers and also citizens. And it really reflects the extraordinary effort that everybody has contributed, and it's been a very essential experience for Colombia and other countries in the region. And finally, another point I want to make about this experience is that we've applied focuses of risk management with a multi-risk perspective of interconnected risks in a sort of chain link, which are mutually effective, so such as the pandemic, the climate change, extreme events, plagues, or animals that get diseases, So the Colombian experience and other projects show us that all of these integral focuses of multi-risk are very necessary in all of the food systems in order to better all of the means of life. So thank you very much, Ana, and thank you for the contribution in talking about what's been done here in Colombia. So now we want to share the opinion of the communities themselves in the departments of Nariño and Putumayo here in Colombia. So go ahead, please. From here, I can tell you that the farming program that we listen to on the radio is very good because we feel very happy about it, and we start to learn a lot of new things. Also, we are in touch with the whole FAO team. The content of the program, we also think it's very good. And the work of FAO is very good because the communities are integrated and we are learning new things for the good of everybody. So thank you very much.
Agradecer a todo este programa porque a pesar de
So we thank the whole program because they've been with us through the whole pandemic with their virtual chats. And we've been learning a lot of new things, such as risk management, also food conservation, handcraft sales through Facebook and YouTube, marketing and innovation, product innovation. And although it's been very complicated because in the beginning we did not have a way of communicating, we didn't have any tablet, so they kindly provided one for us. And the internet sometimes doesn't come through very well, it doesn't give us good signal, but they've been there for us, they've been with us, even though sometimes we only had a certain days that we could choose to do the capacitations. But maybe if we didn't conclude the session that day, they would call us the next day. And we had a lot of guests as well who were able to connect us with other people who taught us a lot about design, marketing, innovation.
Entonces, durante la pandemia no nos hemos podido.
During the pandemic, we've not been able to meet in person because of the reason that they were not able to come and we were not able to go out either. So we were kind of stuck here without being able to leave. But anyways, through phone calls, they would call us and we would meet up here amongst us through the calls. We've been working on the planting in the garden. We've had habichuelas, tomatoes, and a lot of more things. And that's where we've been able to feed ourselves because we cannot go to the towns to buy the vegetables. So this is the way that we sort of feed ourselves, and we sell and we also give it out. And it's the same thing in the road. So we exchange jobs. So all of us can work together to take out the leaves and such.
Mi nombre es José Angulo.
Hello, my name is José Angulo Cortez. I am the community manager in this community. I listen to the program El Campo Sigue, or The Farm Goes On, and I like it very much because it is an alternative for us to be able to receive capacitation from the FAO. We've felt very good about it. Because we've been learning new things, and we are always on the lookout for the program. It's been very good for us because we can feel our FAO colleagues closer, and we are able to receive capacitation and strengthen our knowledge that we already have. in relation to the crops and our cattle. We hope to see our FAO colleagues very soon in the field. Thank you.
La articulación con entidades nacionales y
Articulating between national and local entities has been very fundamental to be able to respond very adequately to the communities in relation to the pandemic. In this section of the program, the Director of Innovation, Technological Development, and Sanitary Protection of the Ministry of Agriculture is here with us, Mr. Angelo Quintero. But first of all, let's get to know him a little bit better. So go ahead, please.
Angelo Quintero Palacio
is the Director of Innovation, Technological Development, and Sanitary Protection of the Ministry of Agriculture. He is an agronomic engineer with experience in the private sector, the flower exploitation sector, reforestation, and coffee culture. He has experience in international businesses from the University Jorge Tadeo Lozano, in rural development in Spain, and a master's in direction and management at the local level. Thank you very much, Angelo, for being with us today. We give you a warm welcome, and thank you once again very much for being here in this radio experience. The question I have is, tell us a little bit about what the main challenges in order to articulate actions that help the rural communities to confront and overcome the pandemic and to respond to the necessities of the rural sector. So thank you, Angelo, for that. Alan Bohani, thank you very much for the invitation that you made us as the FAO to the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development. Likewise, I want to say hi to Silvia and Rocio and everybody who is participating, because everybody who is talking here have a team behind them that is with them and with us, so that they can help us reach all the isolated sectors where they've always been listened to, El Campo Sigue, or the farm goes on. So Alan, thank you very much for this invitation, and let's get to the subject. What has the pandemic brought to us? It's brought to us many things, right? The day-to-day of a country, things usually present themselves in a dynamic way, and we don't really think twice of how a public policy, which has been designed from the local government, and then it reaches the departmental government, and then the municipal government, and then it trickles down all the way to the associations and the local producers, and why not to all the supply chain. So the pandemic basically showed us that we had to integrate together interinstitutionally, both country-wise, government-wise, municipal governments, regional governments, and national governments, in order to make decisions that would give a better development to that the community needed. So it was a time of crisis. It was a moment where we were all in quarantine. Quarantines that were developed from the national government, but the municipal government had to adopt designs. How did they adopt them? Their curfews, and there was a lot of activities that complemented the design of the public national policy. So that's where we all realized that we had to interact in a clear, concise way before this great challenge. And Anna mentioned it very clearly. She said that we realized during the quarantine that the first thing that we had to do was have the biosecurity and design this whole strategy based on biosecurity, where not only the governmental entities participated, but also we had cooperation internationally. All of the different sectors, you as the FAO accompanied, and also the logistics aspects to mobilize food. So those were some of the complex aspects in the beginning in order to sort of make decisions between, in the situation. And likewise, we had also a problematic is that in Colombia, all of the municipalities and the departments do not sort of supply themselves. They do have to incorporate into their diet products that grow in other regions. So we incorporated production tables, and the FAO was also with us there. So everything that had to do with the transportation of this product, because not only we had to mobilize them from the farms to the towns, we had to take them to where the big cities and the big urbans are, such as Bogota, which has 9 million people, Barranquilla, Medellin, Cali, among others. So how are we going to provide that service? Likewise, we also had to work hand in hand with the transportation sector. We could not isolate them. How can we work with them? How can we manage this biosecurity aspect? How can we allow the mobility of those transportations so that they could reach the big cities? Likewise, we were leaving out some people that were quarantined in their homes and were not able to leave. For example, in the urban cities, people who did not have income, they had no way of supporting their families or how to bring food to their table. And that's where the municipal governments, departmental and national governments had to provide so that they will be able to do that. And in the case of the FAO, they accompanied us with that logistics so that they could help us spread all the provision of food and sort of heal that deficit that we had in that aspect on behalf of everybody who was in quarantine, we who were exerting these public official positions. So how can we support our people so that they can have the minimum thing on their table? So after doing all of this, after going through all of these difficulties that we came through, and so the farms and the agricultural sector, as this program says it, I love the name, the Campo Sigue, the farm goes on because they never stop. The human being always has to keep feeding itself, and the farmer kept on working, Colombia kept on working diligently in a responsible way before this request that everybody in the country had. So the government was together with them, they designed policies so that the health professionals could mobilize these health professionals so that they could help people who had COVID. So all of these agro professionals went out, medicine, physicians, agropecuary technicians, with the producers so that they could keep working. And I think that this program is so important because it gave this sort of breath of ease, and they gave information, they gave the necessary tools so that the producers could carry on with more motivation and more enthusiasm to keep working for the development not only of their economic activity, but also the development of food sovereignty that all of Colombia required. So that economic reactivation forced the government to look for alternatives of how could we help to facilitate commercialization challenges and reactivate the economy. How could we, starting from the municipalities, going over to the departments, to make short circuits of communications, some foods that were prepared in municipalities and that we made the best of the information technologies, just like we are doing right now, in order to commercialize in a direct way all of the products and then take them to the people who needed them the most. We also provided support to everything that had to do with the virtual business. We didn't have the opportunity to do that. And we didn't have the possibility to reach
these access where the producer could not do them and couldn't present their product. As a matter of fact, things that were interesting, Alan, imagine that we had the possibility of starting, and it was exactly with the FAO, the first sort of projects in extending farming, virtual farming. That was starting to an agreement that the rural agency has with FAO, and we managed to have these first kind of steps. Always we were thinking that the farming extension had to be assistential and it had to be there in C2 in presence, where you had to be hand in hand. And then we realized that no, in this pandemic, there were other sets of tools that we could have used, and they could be at the service of producers. So we were able to strengthen the working table so that we can deliver information to all producers in a very important alliance with the FAO, the entire matter of food security and food sovereignty that we have been working with FAO, the ecology that we have been working, that some of the important issues that now we're talking of clean production, preserving the environment, innocuous food products, etc. These working tables of supplies for us were fundamental because they enabled us to identify where we had strengths and where we had weaknesses, where we're going to close those tips that are today necessary to have them very clear when we design public policy. I could actually last 10, 15 more minutes speaking of all the other matters, but I am sure that we have had the support, a very decisive support from international cooperation, from FAO, from ECO, and other assistants that have been working hand in hand with the national government, seeking that reactivation, the economic reactivation of our sector, of our farming sector and agro-industrial sector. Thank you very much. Really very important, all the topics you have just mentioned. So now I'm going to hand over the mic to Maria Consuela. Dr. Quintero. Well, thank you very much, really, for your contribution, your ideas, for the updates that you've actually given us to the ministry. And we know that you are one of the members of the technological matters of the technologies, information technologies and communication to strengthen the work. And we cannot see so that we can go more in depth. And then we have to be sure that it's relevant for the sector, no? In different roles and so on, you interviewing us. And now I would like to invite you that you would go more in depth in the lessons learned.
Que para el sector agropecuario y para el Ministerio de Agricultura deja el uso de las comunicaciones.
What lessons learned do you have there of the communication sector you could have to continue to accompany them and not to stop the work and the support to the farmers, to the peasant farmers of our country? So please, if you can hear well, Maria Consuelo, thank you very much for highlighting all the work that we have done in truth in a communication with the ministry, Rodolfo Sea. With the minister, I was telling him that it was impossible for the producers to have work, be working all the time, facing Colombian people with their sweat, with their dirt in their hands to provide food products. And we at the agricultural ministry could not be there to accompany them. That thought allowed us to have these virtual venues like the one that we have here, which is called The Farm Innovates, with obviously a guideline, a very clear guideline of transfer, of technology transfer. One of the problems of our country is that know-how is actually left in the libraries and so on. They have there in the producers. And then we have there, and then we have Mr. Minister Rodolfo said it was actually to take that knowledge that was in the library in a simple way, in a practical way, to all farming producers. Then we go there with the Farm Innovates. We have a PhD researcher that brings information that actually closes the technological gaps that we have in the different productive projects. And obviously, I have the pleasure of introducing this program with two colleagues of the Innovation Directory, Marta and Juan Carlos, two colleagues that are from the farming section, one from cattle. She's a vet. She's the leader of the topic tables, and with her we have been leading the processes that have enabled us to kind of perform some 142 programs, I think, to date. And I guess 100 people on average connected in real time. And we have repetitions around 100, 170, 180 times of reproductions. And this allows us several things. Who is with us in this program? Youngsters, people from 13 years of age. We're talking teenagers to 34 years of age. 80% of the people who are with us, they're like this. So that allows us to infer that there may be a generational transfer that we can actually hand over to the new generations of these things. This is a tiny comment of what the farm is. And thank you very much once again, Maria Consuelo, to speak and address you. Well, thank you very much. And now we are going to have a debate, an open debate, perhaps in the same order with which each one has spoken. A general question. The pandemic has changed the way that we communicate with each other and community, but also that generated the need to have strategies that enables us to act effectively in risk events, and then we have there. So the question is, how do we articulate this, the institutions, the public policies, so that the farming communities can maintain their way of life and at the same time guarantee the production of food? I'm going to hand over to Maria Consuela so that we can answer the question. But I think the question was clear, yes? Yes, of course, the question is clear. But so now we're going to use and we're going to propose the same order. So let's start. Anna?
Maria Consuelo?
Me, Maria Consuelo. Should I do it? Yeah, okay, good. Well, thank you very much for the question, Mr. Rosanik. Well, from the perspective of the region, my region, what we have seen is that countries have prioritized, above all, the investment in health and investment in stabilizing the macroeconomic indicators. Farming has been quite absent. The political agendas of the majority of the countries, because of a general idea, and I think I'm mistaken one of that, because they claim that we were not the most affected sector. So the role of technical and of institutions is precisely the one is to view even further the rural sector and to position it as a sector that needs to be included in the national response plan. And the recovery packages are oriented elsewhere. So in other words, we have to be able to articulate the existing financing to programs of the rural sector. This goes hand in hand through a strong need of activating social capital of the territories and, of course, those inequities, with emphasis on vulnerable groups, women, small producers, micro companies, and Native American peoples or Native communities. On the one hand, it is very important to be able to articulate programs that actually guarantee the support, family-wise and family-wise, programs of water distribution, cattle raising for food security, anything that can contribute to actual better food for the family. On the other hand, to have programs that focus to having greater liquidity, to actually have cash in hand, so that we can have more dynamic economies of rural territories. And many times, this has gone outside the radar. And actually, I want to highlight that need to improve the access of tiny producers to financing actually goes through greater collaboration with the private sector. And at the end of the day, in this articulation of the role of the technical cooperation of these institutions of the public sector and the private sector and these public policies, I would wish to highlight this support to associativity. That associative capacity is actually essential to broaden the scales of production and to improve the market insertion. We need this role of cooperations, of the collaborative work of the different sections, a new relationship between cooperatives and actual companies. And I think I would stop here to actually give some time for the responses of our colleagues. So please, I'll hand over the mic. Anna, thank you, really, truly, because of these characteristics of these questions, I think that, Angelo, I would perhaps ask you to contribute your elements, sir. Please. Right, well, thank you very much. It seems to me that Anna has a view, a very interesting view that I think that is more than worthwhile to highlight. We in the country have done an exercise first of working very much hand in hand with specific cooperation with FAO. We have worked in the working tables, as I've mentioned before, in these topic round tables for discussion, so that these farmers make decisions that are going to be decisive. Because today, these topic working tables are giving the information to the producer in respect of what they should be doing as per what is going to be happening with that climate change. What does that mean? That this is the time to prepare the soil, and this is the time to apply the agrochemicals, is to fertilize or to control plagues or some sort of it's not the same thing when we're going to have a Nina phenomena and so on, that we can actually be attentive to one issue or another phytosanitary problem likewise. So anything that has to do with it. So here we have been doing some really interesting work, and we have found very good responses. Also, within this, as Anna said, I think that it is valid to have the issue of economic reactivation. So how have we worked this economic reactivation? Accompanying producers, including, as a matter of fact, with strategies to handle the freights, to have economic support, to reduce transportation costs. And likewise, we have reactivated areas that are going to be planted by handing over machinery and equipment, so that these producers of the different departments or provinces can actually produce food for the family and make it profitable at that, because we have given out tractors, moto pumps and so on, crop harvesters and harvesting machines, different types of machinery that enable them to improve the productivity and the competitiveness of the farming sector. The credit lines, as we were speaking, this country today has about the lowest rate of the market for the farming sector. So we are paying for each million pesos loan by a small farmer about 1,000 pesos effectively a year, during a year. Actually, we lend them 1 million, he returns 1,000,000 pesos. That is the kind of financing that we are having, so that we can have that flow, that cash, that plan that enables you to reactivate that farming economy, so that they may once again invest in the farming sector, because many were affected. They were unable to market their products for a very simple reason. The consumption dropped, the demand dropped. It actually fell to the floor, and that obviously has horrible, deadly consequences for farmers in the field. For the peasant, the community, farmers, for the medium producer, the large producer, all were affected by the loss of demand. There is no one that actually had something like that. And that is why we have been working in matters that are very important, like the issues of marketing, to close these gaps that we're having in marketing in Colombia. These business enable us to bring together the tiny producer with the end consumer, or the great surface supermarkets, agro-farming with the export market. And in that manner, we have had greater incomes for this. That is what we're betting on. And that is how we're handling farming, as per contracts where we sell first and then we grow and grow. And that way we guarantee that the farming has the possibility of not losing because they don't have a market. And then we have a clip agriculture, and then we go to these marketing. How do we market them? From our farm, from the actual field to get to the end market that are some sophisticated markets, others that are our agro-industrial, and why not say other markets, just the Sunday marketplace that require these technologies as such. So from the national government, we have done some huge efforts in Colombia to accompany the producer by extension. And I said that we did some efforts, digital extension, that this year we're going to strengthen them with presence, with actual visits, but doing virtual support as well, and to give access to all these credit lines so that in this way they can have working capital in the marketing of those products, in the technification of the field, adopting new equipment, machinery that actually enables them to be productive, competitive, profitable, tiny producers, because it is for the small producers. And of course, obviously, there's certain topics that are very important of public policy that we are designing to strengthen the farm and the farm agro-producing. Perfectly, Dr. Quintero. And now just to close and to complement certain elements, I wish to invite you, Oliver, that Sylvia invited us to have the elements of the questions.
De articulación entre lo que es la política
And then we
pública.
have of the public policy in international cooperation institutions, but especially would be very interesting because of the knowledge, because of the realm of action of the European Commission of Humanitarian Aid to be able to go more in depth. We have in those lessons learned that the course of the strategies are left in the humanitarian section. That is a specific realm in the farming section. They are in different contexts, and one of them is actually in right areas of crises, in conditions that are very critical, and I think that your contributions are going to be fundamental. Please go ahead.
Muchas gracias, María Consuelo. Efectivamente, bueno, sobre la articulación de la cooperación técnica.
Thank you very much, Maria Consuelo. Effectively, in respect of this cooperation, I think that my prior guest speakers have very amply covered several points that are very valid in terms of international cooperation. For example, I would add, let's say, the articulation and coordination within the framework of the cluster of food security, that at the end of the day is going to have an important role, that is going to work very much for that exchange, inviting the different players, not only humanitarian ones, but to dialogue and to find articulation so that the farming communities may continue to produce and distribute foods so that they contribute in a general way and so on of their family needs and the like. Also, I think that we have an infinity of opportunities to capitalize on the lessons learned of the implementation of humanitarian problems at a distance. I think that all of them are being implemented. So there's plenty of material, ideas, and opportunities to capture best practices, and finally, at the end of the day, to work hand in hand in what is a differential focus of the humanitarian players and in general of the international cooperation. We have been effectively developing some knowledge in the field about all these different focuses. And I think that this is clearly with the institutions and with other players. So I think that there is potential there too to change about these focuses that are of protection, gender, of age, and there's also very many opportunities. And thank you very much for your other question.
Estrategias de comunicación.
About communication strategies, I usually will only take a few minutes, but I will speak about those communication strategies that I know of FAO.
Organizaciones y finalmente algunas oportunidades y desafíos.
Other organizations that proposes ideas and faces challenges. In respect of FAO, to have audiovisual material that we can use in the production, in the consumption, in the supply of foods, including a good strategy. The FAO it chose the national radio system actually transmit and broadcast its programs. I think it's the most accessible, clearly for especially in the rural areas of Colombia, where they listen to radio still, to radio broadcasting. It is very diverse. It actually includes Colombian deserts, rivers, mountains, plateaus, and so on. So they promote kind of that diversity of the radial pieces that were broadcasted. I think that they have a lot of content, very practical one in respect of when to plant, how to use best water, to have more organic way of growing, and other tips. So others speak also, they speak of cleanliness, disinfection type of tools for the work and preparation for disinfectants with the materials that they have available in the farm. And all of this become really relevant in the COVID context that we are now seeing, and we actually see in the prevention. And then also, we actually, another one that we have in particular from FAO, it's actually, we've led the regional campaign, Regional Women with Rights, that effectively actually been publicized. And then they have their, and then we have here that we have had a nation one there, and great ones, Twitter, Facebook, and the other ones, and social networks and so on. It's been a good strategy, so it's been good. So we have had several examples of how they have served to actually provide continuity to humanitarian projects and development projects, and they have formulated communication routes to be able to try to have more people to reach them with broadcasting, with podcasts, with digital flyers, and so on. But we don't forget the good old hard copy in paper print as educational material and information materials in physical, even in the rural areas. And that is actually is appreciated by many people. Other partners that we have financed in the educational sector during this pandemic emergency, to give other examples of what some other strategies in Colombia formulated, a tool of accompaniment at a distance so that we can actually have a formation of teachers. Also, we have had an array of TV programs for boys, girls, youngsters, teenagers, and so on. And we have translation in Native American languages of Colombia. There are many Native Americans in Colombia that speak different what they call indigenous languages, rural languages, and it was transmitted into that. The communication products and broadcasting must be updated. They have to be active. They have to be living documents with new context as they arise, especially during the pandemic. I give you an example: new measures of restriction, information about vaccination, or how do we recover the market and employment. So there is opportunity to renovate ourselves in the content with these broadcasting in communications. And at the end of the day, the strategy of virtual communication, broadcasting pieces of benefits as well as inconveniences. On the one hand, it enables you to be easily shared, and then to have a broadcasting that reaches more people through that media. And then we also need some good tools to measure the quality of this type of communication. And still, we need methodologies to be more active of these dynamics, to involve effectively all these participants in the field, in the farm. Thank you.
Gracias a ti, Silvia. Muchas gracias. Digamos, tenemos aquí una visión muy integral.
Thank you, Silvia. We have a very integral view of what the critical perspective of the humanitarian intervention, the farm perspective, seeing it from the field, looking at the city, and so on, to have a very relevant media of everything that we need of technical cooperation from here onwards. And from here, I would like you to invite you to listen to the opinion of other institutions that have been accompanying us, and to have the actions of the FAO, and to have other indications to continue to accompany the institutions and the Colombian farm. From the Unit for Risk Management and Disaster Management, we value very positively the link with the FAO here in Colombia, their link that they have provided for the government, whether territorial government or national government, is support during the different emergency and those crisis situations that we have had in the last year, particularly within the context of the disaster and in this pandemic COVID-19 scenario. With FAO, we have managed in a complementary way to have an integral focus by bringing there of aspects of conservation of natural resources with risk management and disaster response, and to actually provide means of life, family agriculture, food security for the family, among other issues. Likewise, we have worked jointly to generate activities to respond to these great magnitudes, as was the case of these two hurricanes that we had in the archipelago of San Andrés, Providencia, and Santa Catalina in this past November. Aside from the translation, you also had subtitles that you could have read. There are subtitles.
Para las poblaciones rurales y dirigida a poblaciones vulnerables como los niños que presentan riesgo de desnutrición y las mujeres con bajo peso, es la modalidad 1000 días para cambiar el mundo. Esta modalidad se enmarca en la Gran Alianza por la Nutrición y en el Plan contra la Desnutrición Ni Uno Más. Aquí atendemos niños de las zonas más alejadas del país y hemos hecho algunos procesos de fortalecimiento. Si bien la atención busca mejorar el estado nutricional, esa atención básica que ofrecemos a través de alimentos especializados, raciones familiares que contribuyen a garantizar el estado nutricional de las familias, también tenemos un componente muy fuerte relacionado con el tema de educación alimentaria y nutricional. Para fortalecerlo, contamos el año pasado, en el 2020, con un convenio con la FAO a través de la cual implementamos estrategias que permitieran tener el desarrollo de procesos sostenibles. Realizamos unos procesos y unas alternativas diferenciales en 6 departamentos del país que fueron priorizados, donde trabajamos directamente con las familias a través de formación, una virtual y otra directamente con ellos, de tal forma que tuvieran la capacidad de generar algunos espacios productivos que a largo plazo garanticen que el estado nutricional de los niños se va a mantener.
Bueno, uno de los grandes retos.
Okay, so one of the biggest challenges here amongst the pandemic for the FAO team here in Colombia, as it has been for all the teams at the global level, has been to have the support of the strategy of social mobilization. So there was a switching of roles. So people who were acting the most and directly in the first line, it was us, the agro profile. So this inversing or this reverting of the roles made the people in the media much more involved, and it's not an exception here in Colombia. So we also need to keep on supporting the communities and also provide support, technical support, in a remote way and in a virtual way. So we had to include biosecurity recommendations that would allow us to reduce contagious from the COVID in the whole agricultural sphere. So this means we had to adapt, but also there were a lot of questions came into the light. The whole adapting through WhatsApp, through radio, this all has worked. What have we learned? And it's here to stay. So it's very important to listen directly to all the technicians who have been at the ground accompanying the communities. So now we're going to listen to Mayra De Luque, who is a cooking technician. She is a chef in Guajira, from Guajira, and we will also hear people from Pasto, Nariño, Sergio Lopez, which is an engineer, and agroforestal engineer, Lady Neira, and from Putumayo, we will listen to Mauricio Castelblanco, our local technician from the zone. So go ahead, please.
Hola, un saludo desde la distancia. Mi nombre es Mayra Alejandra de Luque Piayú. Hago parte del componente educación alimentaria y nutricional de los proyectos en La Guajira.
The video is subtitled, so can you just read from there?
Llamadas telefónicas y grupos de WhatsApp. Los líderes de cada comunidad, cuando tienen energía o cuando puedan descargar todas las imágenes, infografía, videos y todo lo que cada uno de los componentes envía a los líderes, ellos descargan cada una de las actividades y las socializan con las comunidades en el territorio. Los líderes reúnen a todos los miembros del proyecto y replican lo aprendido que cada uno de nosotros le hace al momento de la llamada o cuando le envía un mensaje por WhatsApp. Cada una de estas actividades ha sido muy aprovechosa, pues ha permitido que todas las actividades y todo el proyecto salga adelante, no se quede, y pues han sido herramientas que nosotros hemos adoptado para seguir adelante en los proyectos. Muchas gracias.
La difícil comunicación en un contexto donde están presentes todos los factores de vulnerabilidad, como desnutrición, analfabetismo, violencia doméstica, maltrato infantil, carencia de servicios públicos y conflicto armado, entre otros, fueron los retos que debíamos asumir en una etapa de aislamiento y confinamiento en nuestro territorio. A su vez, esta situación nos exigió soluciones urgentes e inmediatas para no poner en riesgo los objetivos de un proyecto que, de no continuarse, agravaría más la situación de vulnerabilidad de estas poblaciones, especialmente el acceso a los alimentos. La estrategia utilizada fue la conformación de un equipo de comunicadores interdisciplinario, quienes desde su rol profesional y experiencia asumieron el reto de construir materiales y herramientas de participación a través de vía telefónica, WhatsApp, cartillas didácticas, audios y videos, y la realización de un programa radial comunitario que llegara a todos los rincones, utilizando los mensajes necesarios para que la población actúe como parte de la solución. Además, se logró que a través del apoyo de auxiliares comunitarios se mantuviese la comunicación permanente y efectiva. Inventamos un nuevo método de enseñanza remota para poblaciones de bajo nivel educativo, utilizando muchas de las herramientas modernas de comunicación, y el resultado fue la generación de un lazo de confianza y fortaleza demostrado en hechos tangibles y en resultados productivos de toneladas de alimentos y generación de capacidades productivas.
Mi experiencia en la construcción del programa radial El Campo Sigue la describo como una experiencia enriquecedora y desafiante. Enriquecedora porque me ha permitido ahondar y profundizar en temas técnicos, aprender de ellos y de los temas de mis compañeros, pero también escucharme y manejar las pausas para ser mejor escuchado. Desafiante, porque al convertirme en locutor radial de manera inesperada, fue todo un reto, y a partir de allí acoplarme a los tiempos de las grabaciones, transmitir con un lenguaje de fácil comprensión. Pero mi mayor desafío fue transmitir energía positiva en mis intervenciones que le permitiera a la familia sentir mi presencia y acompañamiento en las implementaciones de las actividades en tiempos de la pandemia. La exposición de temas técnicos en el programa radial ha contribuido en mi trabajo, claro que sí, porque me ha permitido continuar con el proceso de acompañamiento a las familias en sus actividades productivas y ayudar a fortalecer sus capacidades para hacerle frente a los problemas que se les presentan en sus unidades productivas. Finalmente, les recuerdo, quédense quieticos y sigan escuchando su programa, nuestro programa, El Campo Sigue.
La pandemia originada por COVID-19 en el año 2020 trajo muchos retos a nivel rural, entre otros por la restricción a la movilidad de la población con el fin de reducir el nivel de contagio. Sin embargo, las economías locales sufrieron significativamente, incrementando los niveles de vulnerabilidad de las familias. Por ello fue necesario desarrollar una estrategia que nos permitió llegar a los productores y a las productoras mediante ejercicios de comunicación remota. A nivel rural, los mecanismos de comunicación son deficientes, por lo que decidimos remitirnos a las bases de datos y encontramos que las mejores formas de comunicación en estos contextos son la vía telefónica, los mensajes de texto y en algunas zonas mediante la internet y las redes sociales. Los ejercicios de fortalecimiento de capacidades a nivel comunitario se redujeron, tratando de evitar al máximo la aglomeración de personas, pero a través de telefonía celular logramos llegar a las familias y grupos nucleados. Primero, indagando por la salud, sus condiciones de movilidad para acceder a alimentos, sus medios de subsistencia y su seguridad alimentaria y nutricional. Y segundo, haciendo un acompañamiento permanente para brindar la asesoría y la asistencia técnica de acuerdo a los procesos productivos, a los procesos de transformación y en temas de preparación y conservación de alimentos con un enfoque de gestión de riesgos. Logramos así la comunicación permanente con más de 300 familias, apoyándonos en las nuevas tecnologías de información y comunicación a través de llamadas, mensajes, videos, con imágenes y contenido para hacer las recomendaciones que fueran de fácil aplicación y así mantener la productividad, mantener la motivación y principalmente la seguridad para no bajar la guardia en esta época de emergencia sanitaria.
Habiendo escuchado, esto es importantísimo.
So after listening to this very important comment about how we have been recovering to reach the rural areas and all of the producers and all of the... So now we want to know from you, from the perspective of the farmers, all of your opinions or questions, mainly directed to our very distinguished speakers. So please ask anything you want. So from now, we are opening up our chat and we will be receiving any of your questions or any commentaries that you might have with regards to the program. So please go ahead with your questions in the chat section. Okay, so while you start posting your questions and putting them on the chat, we would like to make the most of this space to show you our calendar or our schedule that was designed specifically thinking about a printed document that can be of use, but that can also contain key messages to produce food safely, as well as getting involved their primary production and transforming all the transformators and the food consumer, the shops, and food distributors. So it's a calendar that allows us to show month to month and remember all of these key aspects to protect the diversified production of food, and also look after our immunological system, and also be able to apply biosecurity measures in the field and in the farm. So you can find this and download it in the link that we've just put up in the chat section. So in this way, if we do have enough time, please ask me by internal message, and maybe we can put up some screenshots, and in the chat you'll be able to download that from the chat. Okay, so here it is. Here is the front page of our calendar, and month to month we can find, first of all, the key recommendations for the farmer. And as I was telling you, lets you look at the whole chain of the food and the basic aspects, and as well as the months where there's the most rain according to our different seasons. And we also find recommendations to integrate the reduction of risks and disasters. So it's a very pretty calendar, and especially for the rural population. So we leave it here for you so that you can download it and use it, and so that we can get it to the people who need it the most. And now, because of time constraints, we will move on to the questions. So here, by internal messages, I am receiving different sorts of questions from all around the world. So we are going to prioritize some. We probably won't have time for all of them, but we will try to make the most of it. So we will start by a question from Damaris Castillo from Colombia, and to Ana Ricovi. Anna, after a year of this new reality, what do you think are the main challenges in order to reconstruct the rural dynamics in regards to COVID-19? Thank you very much, Maria Consuelo, and thank you to Maris for the question here with this focus of reconstructing the rural dynamic. To be honest, I think from the regional perspective, the biggest worry has been the impact that the slowing down of the economy has had on the loss of jobs and the falling of the wages, of the revenues as well. And it's very important that the workers of the region are mostly informal, and many times their income depends on a day-to-day basis. So the loss of acquisitive power in the families directly jeopardizes their access to food, as well as their quality of the diet. So there's really this worry about, a very strong worry about this access theme. So in this perspective, in order to strengthen the reconstructing efforts of the rural dynamics with regards to the pandemic, we will need programs that can stimulate the investment and also jobs and employment programs that promote the recovering of the economy with transformation, that also contemplate the farming, family, agriculture as part of the solution. As it has been mentioned many times today, we need to promote the resilience of the agricultural family and also including them financially. So really the main challenge is the reconstruction of this dynamic. I would also like to add that more than $3 trillion, and we're talking about huge quantities here, $3 trillion have been assigned as part of these fiscal packages for COVID on a global level. So some part of it will be spent in this long journey to recovery. And in the currently, we have the opportunity to make sure that nature is integrated into economy as this sort of reset that will, on the one hand, will give better jobs, but on the other hand, also will provide economic value and also natural capital that is necessary, as has been shown, for public health and also for the society's resilience. So really, we will not have another chance like this one in order to make a change, and at least not in this critical decade. And if human costs and economic costs of COVID have taught us anything, it's been this message that nature has to be the basis of economies. And it is key to design strategies that promote greater resilience and more equity and also greater well-being. So the challenge really is to be able to identify, design and promote all of this type of public policy of fiscal or legal recovery that multiply the economy and also generate positive climate impacts on the climate. For example, restoring carbon-rich habitats. And so I hope I have answered your question. Very well, Anna. Thank you very much for all those elements and for answering the question of Adamaris. Caroline from Uganda is also writing from us. She's from Africa, and she asks, how can I reach the farmers, given that most of them don't have access to radio and they do daily activities that don't allow them to synchronize? So we are also here with the coordinator of the FAO Colombia, Jorge. Jorge, please go ahead. Hello, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be part of this virtual emission of The Farm Goes On, or the Campo Sigue. So effectively, to be able to carry the messages to the rural communities is many times a big challenge, since the connectivity is not an easy task. So in the case of these questions that we get from Uganda, we do have to try to get all the technologies, apply all the technologies possible, and whenever we don't have these or it's not factible, the necessary thing is to try to reach them through traditional methods such as leaflets, pamphlets, maybe rural newspapers, or periphonal is also very important, which is basically a person who walks around between the communities with a megaphone, and he's transmitting all the different messages. So we always have to be looking for alternatives. So we have to think very much about what population we are trying to reach, who are we engaging with, what is their level of education, in order to be able to select the best tools, that best communicative tools that permit or allow us to transmit these messages. And so I think that's the answer that I would give Maria Consuelo. Very good day to you. Thank you very much, Jorge. So, Mr. Alan Buchanik, we have another question, which is made exactly for your measure. The department of the Women Department of Consultative Council asks us, what strategies can we apply in order to guarantee that the rural sector keeps up with the production of food, and it is them directly who are the providers in major markets, to avoid sort of this intermediates and loss of products because of lack of direct commercialization. So go ahead, Mr. Buhani. Yes, thank you very much. This is not an easy question. We have many factors that intervene in this whole supplying topic. Without a doubt, Angela was referring to many of these, all the support that all the communities need, and also credit support and machinery support, all of these kinds of direct support. But it's also fundamental to put the prices right. So how do we articulate the people who are in the field, in the farms, with the urban sectors where the consumption is? So the price can be well established, and the producer knows at all times, thanks to these instruments, what the actual price that they will have to do, and they also have to have support to make a good cost estimation of how much it costs them to produce a determined specific product and take it to the cities. So this complexity of factors, basically, in a way, we have tried to cover them all and construct policies of supplying, and we also know that, as I said very clearly, the pandemic is one of the things that it produced was an alteration of traditional channels. There was a very good channel made from the farmers and the agriculture to the supplying centers, but many of these centers stopped working, so it's always risky. And how do we redirect these commercialization channels? And it's part of the challenge, which we permanently we have to monitor the flow and monitor how the products start arriving to the cities and giving the marketing signals to the producers, and also provide all the necessary support so that to assure quality and quantity. They also ask that if we could have a little bit more time, but I think that we do have a limit on time, so that's where I'll cut it. Okay, perfect, Mr. Buhani. Thank you very much. We go with another question because the end of the program is nearing. So Enid from Montes de Maria is writing to us, and she asks, within their object is the support to immigrants, especially to children, with support to the food and the feeding. How can FAO support the initiative and strengthening the productiveness in this organization? So this is the question that Anit asks us. And so I would like to tell you and exemplify the way that it's being done. A department that's farther north in Guajira. It is a zone where rurality is reaching a very important size of immigrant population and people who have come back from Venezuela. And taking into account that the mandate of the FAO is to help improve the access to food through production by their own hands of these people, even if they're migrants or they're Colombians, whoever is interested, and so that they get the chance to make a better future. And we're developing, doing work to recover agricultural means of life in communities where they're being accepted, where these Venezuelans are being accepted, and to promote so that everybody has access to food, so that we leave nobody behind. And basically the FAO contributes their technical capacity together with the Ministry of Agricultural and contributors such as ECHO, which provide the necessary income that we need to make these sort of initiatives possible. So we're doing progress towards this, and we expect that we have the chance to be able to reach a lot more communities. So I think that that's where we can leave it at that. The thank you to all of our guests, to all of our speakers. So we will now continue to the closing session. So I will give space to Bohonik so that he can close the program. I would have loved to make a sort of conclusion of all of this information that's been so rich that we've received from all the different institutions that have opined, of all of the technicians and technicists. I think we don't have the time, but nonetheless, I want to thank from my heart to all of the guests, Silvia, to Angelo, of course, to colleague Anna and Nicole, and thank you very much for your participation. And also thank all of you for being able to letting us reach your homes and listen to all of these messages that I think they are of good use to all of us. So the farm goes on. It will carry on going on, not just the program, but also the flow of food and the very important work that is being done by the rural communities, and that have been able to, they've been able to do it in a heroic way during this pandemic by providing us with food day to day. So this is a space dedicated to transmitting knowledge for the farming sector. So we share the link in the chat there. You can get to know a little bit more about the Farm Goes On and what it's about. So I thank you for your attention. We will be waiting for you in the next session. Thank you, and merry day and happy day to all of you. The